Okay.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Old Mac Gang podcast, OMG, the show where longtime Mac and Apple users share practical tips, apps, and stories for age-seasoned Apple fans. I'm Marty Gensius, a 68-year-old Mac user, podcaster, academic, and a proud iPad evangelist. Joining me are Chris, Peter, Charlie, and Bob, our panel of classic Apple users. So let's do some introductions, and we go to Chris.
Hey, good evening. I'm Chris. I'm a 78-year-old retiree here in Tucson, Arizona. Happy member of the Tucson Mac User Group. Spent a lot of time with user groups in the past, worked for Apple for a while, did some university IT, and now I'm retired and I have all day to play with my Apple toys. In keeping with tonight, we'll talk more about iPads, but I've also got an M1 and an iPhone 16 Pro Max and multiple other toys and services.
Peter?
Hi, I'm Peter. I'm a 73-year-old Apple enthusiast from Bay Village, Ohio. I have a 13-inch M4 iPad Pro, a number of accessories for it, an Apple Pencil, Magic Keyboard, Smart Folio, and a right-sized Timbuk2 messenger bag that carries all those things and a bit more. Like all of my Apple gear, these serve me well. I enjoy using them and look forward to chatting about them tonight.
And we've got Charlie.
Hey there. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. All that other good stuff. And this is 3D printed. Very happy with that. I'm a 70-year-old in Houston, Texas, and I have an M1 Pro when I'm about ready to upgrade to an M4, I think. I also have an Apple Watch Series 10, which I love and I use like crazy on my health stuff, including medications and workouts and all that stuff. I've really been getting into it. I don't have an iPad right now. I did have one at work, but I don't really see a need for it with what I've got. So it'll be interesting to hear what others have to say.
Okay, Charlie. Great. Bob. Bob is wearing a cactus.
Yes, I am. Good evening. I'm Bob Wood, and I am also in Tucson and a member of the local Macintosh user group. And I've been associated with Mac user groups since the early 90s. I'm happy to be here, and let's talk iPad.
All right. Well, the chatter that's been going around in our group room has been about a couple of things, but particularly 5 free Mac apps that are available. And this is an article. We have the link in the chat room. And I'll just take any comments from folks in terms of use of some of these apps. Zetler is one, which is a markdown app. PDF Gear, which is kind of a PDF file manager and file editor. Latest, which is a source app for finding on your system what apps might need to be updated. Tyke, which is a very small sort of notepad and note editor, scratch paper, as we call that. And then Full Moon, which is a AI chatbot that's done locally. If you want to run AI on your system without having to go out to other places. I'll leave it up to the group. Anybody have any comments about any of these apps? Yeah, Chris.
I tried the latest app, and it really serves an interesting niche need for me, and I'm definitely going to keep it. I use a variety of photo software and photographic stuff, and for instance, DxO, Adobe, and the DxO stuff, I don't find out it needs to be updated because it's from their website. And until I open the app, then I got to go, okay, now I got to walk through the thing. So what I tend to do, and there are 3 of these apps or 3 series, I tend to like once a week, I'll just check them. and just see if any of them need it and just walk through all of them at once. And the thing that's really interesting about latest, it'll not only show me, but it'll show me what's in, the developer comments, not necessarily the release notes per se, but just the comments, like as you'd see in in any kind of download scenario. Here's the latest, and then you can do it directly from latest. You don't even have to open the app. So it is a much more efficient use of time, and I think it's real worthwhile, and to go through the whole system. So
Yeah. Any other comments on any of these apps from the group? I will just add that I put in Zettler because I've played around with Markdown editors, and it's a pretty standard Markdown editor. The best part is it's a free Markdown editor. If you want to write in Markdown, which is a way that you can put in symbols to represent indents and represent bold levels of boldness in certain type and things like that. Reminds me of the old typewriter that an electronic typewriter had, where you'd shift on and shift off certain functions for that. Charlie, you got something to add on this?
Yeah, I was glad to find that because the Markdown format is what, if you go into ChatGPT or Duck.ai and you say copy, what it copies is Markdown content, text
Yeah.
content. And so if you take that output from the ChatGPT or from Duck.ai, then you can make it look more presentable. So it's very useful for that.
oh, I like that idea.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very cool. Some folks played around with PDF, what is it, PDF Gear as a PDF editor, and folks might want to look at that and the links to that. I am doing a lot of stuff with AI and have presented on it and looking at the ideas of security and maintaining your privacy with it. There are a couple of apps that I'm familiar with, Llama and LM Studio, which are on device AI, and then you download the model that you're going to use. Full Moon is a similar app to that. The idea that on your Mac you can have this shell that you then put whatever AI model you want to run on it, and it'll run on your laptop and not necessarily share that information or share that information outside of your system for doing it. So that was just out of fascination that I was interested in looking at Full Moon. But let's get on to tonight's topic. All right, and I have some of the websites. We have a lot of links in the show notes. So listeners or watchers, the show notes will have more links than we'll be able to show, but I'll give you some rundown of it as we go through it. Tonight's we're going to talk about the iPad and how we use it, and if we have it, how we have used it in the past, and so let's start with some of the information that we have. Daily use cases, generally reading and viewing. If you're using your iPad and I think all of us will comment on this in our own daily use. Some light productivity that you can do with it, email. I know people who love the iPad better than they love their Mac, and they have found the utility and use of the iPad where I haven't been able to find that yet. But there are folks that do, if not all, as much as they can of their work just on the iPad OS and iPad platform. So I say light productivity, and that varies from people to people. There are creative tools. Obviously, it's a great device for drawing, sketching, artwork, things that you want to create through that. Also has Final Cut Pro. So if you want to do video editing, you can do it on the iPad. And then primarily the largest use, I think, is entertainment, for entertainment purposes. So there is a section in the show notes on iPad tips. It basically, a lot of it's coming from Apple's support, but it talks about things like Stage Manager, how you can center people when they come into the field of view of your iPad, how it automatically centers folks. Sidecar as a method for using it as a side device. The split view or the slide over, which has been a big controversy in people's preferences for use since they changed that with the latest OS. Focus modes, also things like Scribble and how you can use that for writing and then it converting it into text, and also the ability to do quick notes on the iPad. There's a bunch of recommended apps, and some of these I'll ask for comment when we get out of this section from folks. But Good Notes is a pretty prominent iPad app. It's a good note keeping app, but it does more than just take what you write. It also takes what you draw. You can put all sorts of things together, and then it has AI capability. Notability has been around for a while and is a similar sort of note taking app. It includes audio capture, and it's has similar to what is in Good Notes, has a lot of the same functionality for that. They put Things in. Things is an app that is used for putting your daily to-do list together. And I don't know, I bounce around to-do lists like popcorn in a steam kettle. I will try one and then try the other. I was on to I was on Things for a while and then picked up a Android phone, and Things only works on Apple devices. It works on every device, but it only works on Apple devices. Whereas Todoist is the list that I'm working with now in terms of it works on both Android and on Apple devices. So having both and carrying them or carrying different ones at different times, I was looking at Things. Has anybody used Things in this group? Yeah, Peter.
Yes, I use things. It's my main to-do list and has been for 8 or 9 years. Uh, I love it. If you're not gonna if you haven't used it and don't think it's the thing that you're gonna use, it's expensive because it's got a separate price on every Apple device, and none of the prices are particularly small.
Yeah,
But I think it's gorgeous. You know, people
yeah.
like Mac because they have a nice appearance, and I do use it every day, multiple times, so it's worth it to me. The other one that you mentioned that I use is I've used GoodNotes for the last 7 or 8 years as well, and it's very competitive uh, with Notability. I mean, they leapfrog each other with features, but they're both very similar, and I don't think there's any feature that both of them don't have.
Yeah.
I use it particularly when I'm in meetings and I don't like having a screen up between me and the other people. And with your iPad laying flat on the table and you writing like you would on a piece of paper, I feel like I'm more connected with other people. So uh, I don't use it as much as when I was an active educator, at which time I used it every day, 7 days a week. Now I probably use it 2 or 3 times every week.
I'm gonna. I agree with you. I have a workload that I have to keep track of stuff, and I haven't. However, I haven't found one of these apps that I try and I swap around to them a lot that actually helps me get my work done faster.
Mm.
Because procrastination is a natural quality that I have. So an app doesn't help me fix that. I guess I can put times on it and things like that. But this is a good app for, yeah, Peter.
Yeah, one more thing I would say about productivity, and I'm not sure how you measure this, but if I'm in a meeting or at a class as a student taking notes, both either notability or good notes is invaluable. You're taking notes, and as you're taking notes, you can be reorganizing them. If you need more room, you can just create space on the page. I
Yeah.
mean, it really makes your notes come out intelligible and useful. And I think some of the process of reorganizing, saying, "Oh, this is important, and I'm going to make it bigger," uh, is helps you understand. I mean, the way the
Yeah.
old Cornell system used, where it was like a three-step system with pencil and paper, I think you can do that on some of these devices.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to go to the next app so we can run through this. This is Libby. And I would bet more than one of you have something to say about Libby. It's a great app. It's ability to be able to sign on to your local library and then be able to get library books in terms of reading. And frankly, the iPad is really kind of an optimal device for reading. Peter, can you talk more about this? I know you've done Libby. I don't know if anybody
I,
else has used Libby.
I do use Libby, and it works great. If you're going to take a book out from the library and read it, it's a no muss, no fuss kind of thing. It allows you to easily check books out. I will admit that I probably use Libby only on certain books, that a lot of times I will download the EPUB and read it in Apple Books. I just like
Mm-hmm.
the interface a little better.
Yeah.
But to each their own. Libby works well, and it also works with audiobooks as well as visual books, so you
Yeah.
can do both.
Okay. Next app. So you guys kind of populated the app things. Who put up Sunseeker? All right, Bob. Let us know a little bit about Sunseeker.
Sunseeker is an app that allows you to use your iPad, hold it up, and you can see where the sun will set tonight. So if you're a photographer and you're looking for a good sunset, it's important to be in the right spot. And so you can use Sunseeker to see where the sun will set and where the sun will rise. By looking through your camera, it shows you where you should stand. Oh, I want to move 5 feet to the left, and that will help me get the sunset photo I want. The other app right below is Moonseeker, and it does the same thing. If you're trying to see the moon rise or the moon set, use Moonseeker.
Yeah. And we have, of course, the link for Moonseeker in there too. Once you explained Sunseeker, I pretty much figured out Moonseeker was the same, but just with the moon in terms of doing that. Jump Desktop. Who dropped that one in? Peter? Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that was me. And I've often heard people say I can do everything on my iPad that somebody does on their MacBook, and I just think that's total baloney. Uh, I mean, I can't.
That's okay.
It's not an adequate substitute for a MacBook for anyone. I don't want to disregard people who I would call minimal users. They're just as valuable as people who use their machines, pedal to the metal. If you use email, web browsing, and simple use of basic common apps like word processing and spreadsheets, an iPad is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But the only way to get close to using it as a real computer is to connect to a real computer, and both Jump and Screens are ways to remotely connect to a real computer. So if I want to do something that's like, some heavy duty math lifting, I can connect from my iPad and just see the screen on my MacBook and run it like I'm sitting there. That doesn't mean it's like a MacBook, though, because when you have a MacBook, you can plug and unplug things right in front of you. And when you use a remote computer, it's back home or in some rack in some storage center, but it does allow you to do remote control of computers, and that's very nice. And in a lot of cases, uh, I go, oh, I should have done this on my machine back home. Couple clicks, I'm back home. I can do it. The only reason I put them both there is because I used screens for years and years, and then there were some features that didn't work quite as good. Jump did it, but I'd already paid for them. I mean, I think they're competitive, and you want to look at the array of devices and the array of things you want to connect to make a choice between the two.
Yeah, I noticed that screens, and I know on the podcast that I do, Vision Profiles, Eric talks a lot about screens and how much he uses it. And then screens has the right up on the homepage that, again, we'll have the link in the show notes, has a Vision Pro on it. And so that might be one difference. I didn't quite see that
Right.
with Jump, but
Jump doesn't use the Vision Pro, no.
yeah. Okay, a couple of other things, or at least one other thing that we're going to talk about is Hoopla. Charlie, do you want to talk about Hoopla? Charlie?
Yeah, uh, it and Flipster, which I can give to you too. These are both associated with libraries. In my case, since I have a library card at the Houston Public Library System, I can go to this source. Since you mentioned the other library stuff, I thought I'd mention Hoopla, and there's a thing called Flipster, and Flipster is associated with public libraries and also university libraries, and it's a way to get digital versions of all kinds of magazines, New Yorker, Washington Post, the whole nine yards, all for free through your library. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, hold on. Let me get rid of this. Um, anyway, Flipster, if you'll do a search on Flipster real quick and you'll find it. I was trying to get the link in there, but
We'll put the
go
link.
find
We'll put we'll put the
put the
link
link
in the
in
show
later.
notes.
Okay. The
Yeah.
Flipster lets you get you magazines and newspapers. So all these things that are paywalled you can go and use through your library. And typically, they don't give you full articles, they give you the text. But even that is usually enough if all you want to do is get the article and read it. And it's
Yeah.
not
So
iPad. It's not iPad
yeah.
specific, but
Yeah.
since we mentioned the library stuff, I thought I'd mention that too.
Yeah. I want to kind of go through a few of these accessories, and then we'll
Sure.
get into our questions. So first of all, first accessory is keyboards. And of course, there is the very, very expensive Apple keyboard that does all sorts of wonderful stuff. I'm a person that uses a keyboard. I cannot use the app with just, or can't use the iPad with just the key, the screen. Generally, when I am using my iPad, it involves a lot of typing. And so I would rather have a screen. I know there's also a cheaper version of this, which is the Combo Touch for iPad and the Logitech. The thing that I notice, and you can see if you're looking at the video, the Logitech Combo Touch has a fold out kind of thing to prop up the iPad, which means you need to be on a pretty extended flat surface in order for it to be able to go. And I've had these fold outs before. I had one in one of the cheaper models of the iPad had one of those, and I just found it can't sit on my lap, and I have to have really extended table space. It's the only way I'm going to be able to type on it. So I've never been much for the cantilever that comes out and props the iPad up. I did find one for my iPad Pro and purchased it, and it was a very reasonable price compared to the $300+ that you pay for Apple's version. The Typecase Edge Plus keyboard case for iPad Pro, and it was $124. And functionally does everything that the iPad the Apple's version does, and works really well. So I bought that and want to share that as an additional track. Apple Pencil is one thing that if you're going to get an iPad at some point, you're probably going to want to have an Apple Pencil and find a functional way to use it. And I don't know who put in the MetaPen. Okay, Bob, talk
That was
about the
me.
MetaPen, if you will. Yeah.
The MetaPen is $20. It does not have pressure sensitivity like the Apple Pencil does. But if you are making artworks and you probably want the Apple Pencil. But if you're just using it to move things around and sometimes press buttons, the MetaPen does really well, and $20 it's hard to beat.
I wonder if anybody's used the Logitech Crayon.
Yeah, I have. I've used the Logitech Crayon. And got one when I got that cheaper iPad. I wanted just to have another pen to use with it in pencil. It's not bad, but it does feel it has a different feel than the Apple Pencil or probably even the Meta Pen, just in its shape and its design and what you can do with it. But I was curious about it as an input device, and so I got one a while back to play with it. I want to I brought a couple of other things, or at least one more thing in here that was going to be part of my discussion, but the idea of a rock, paper, pencil. What rock, paper, pencil is, it is a screen, like if you put a screen protector on your laptop,
Oh.
it's like a screen protector for your iPad. But it sits on top of it. Doesn't really affect the functionality of it whatsoever. But the texture of it is coarser, and it comes with tips that work with it, special tips that they have that react to it, and it really has the feeling like you're writing on paper. I have always felt it's just too slippery for me. My handwriting stinks anyways. But unless I'm getting kind of the traction back from it, I'm my handwriting gets even more illegible on the glass screen. This is really quite neat. It kind of sits, you put it down, and it's not like you have to smooth out the bubbles or anything. It's a frame that kind of attaches itself around the side of the iPad frame. And in the picture, you can kind of see it. And it's easy to take off. You can take it off and put it on as much as you want. But it has a really nice functionality for drawing and the ability to kind of put the use the device with much more of a texture related to it. I know Peter has talked about in the past tips that you can put on, and I've gotten some of those rubber tips that you can put on that has some of the same effect. But I've been really impressed with the reactivity of this from astropad.com. It's called Rock Paper Pencil, and you can buy it for any size iPad that you have. I have it on all my iPads. I bought one for the iPads that I have. So that's kind of a neat addition that you might consider if you're doing a lot of writing on your iPad. It's really pretty cool. So we have a section that will be in the show notes on accessibility, and I'm not going to go through the sites on here, but again, things like larger text, assistive touch, voice control, and magnifier can be all a part of your iPad, and links are there to Apple support to show you how to do that. So I'm going to jump into the three questions that we have and also kind of making sure that we keep our show moving. So the first question is, what is your iPad usage like, Chris?
Yeah, well, let me give you a little bit of history. I actually won my first iPad by answering a university parking and transportation survey. And I thought, oh, great, what am I going to do with this thing now? Well, I was riding a bus back and forth 45 minutes every day. And in the Bay Area traffic in San Francisco or East Bay, this could easily turn into an hour or sometimes 2 hours. So it was pretty horrendous. And I actually learned about ebooks and audiobooks and meditation apps and all sorts of stuff with that iPad. And I still have it in the other room, and it's fantastic. Um, when I went to replace that, I decided I didn't know exactly if I was going to be using the iPad very much. So I got the eighth generation entry level 3 years ago, right? Because we're on 11 now. And this is the eighth generation. And it was the pre-M model. And at the time, Apple hadn't told us what they were going to do with an M class iPad. Well, once all of that came out, I thought, well, it's an underpowered iPad. Maybe I'm not going to use it that much. And so I'm re-inspired by tonight's show, and I've gotten it out and I've got it set up on an old laptop stand made by some folks called Rainbow. It's a aluminum cast, and it's just in a perfect spot. And I'm psyched because I've talked about this before, but when I use my iPhone in the continuity camera mode as my webcam, I don't have an iPhone to like have text come in or emails and stuff like that. Well, I've actually solved that problem. And it's great with the universal control because once I set it up and I run the cursor over, it'll automatically go onto the iPad screen. I don't have to do
Mm-hmm.
anything. And once the cursor's there, then I can type there with the regular keyboard. So that's real helpful. Um, so there's several ways to kind of break this down. Um, you know, I think there's a real split between, as Marty mentioned earlier, between sort of light productivity and entertainment. And it's a fantastic device for Kindles and audiobooks and all that kind of stuff. And if you remember back when Steve first introduced the iPad, he was sitting in an armchair. He wasn't at a desk. And he was trying to really enforce that idea with the iPad on his knee, with his legs crossed on his knee, doing stuff. And, um, he was good at that.
Yeah.
And it, it can be very helpful for that. Now, I know seniors who have said, look, everything, life is so complicated. I like the simplified version of stuff on my iPad. It'll take over for my laptop. I don't care. I'm mostly just doing web and email and stuff. I mean, more power to them. But like Peter said, you know, yes, Adobe makes Lightroom Mobile that I can run on my phone or I can run on my iPad. But no, it's not the same as Lightroom on a Mac. And,
Yeah.
invariably when I edit stuff on the road, when I'm traveling, when I get home and I look at the 27-inch screen, I'll add more or just change the edits anyway. So, so I'm not really that big a user, but I think this occasional use is going to work great for me.
Yeah.
And, for the light apps, I would call them, like email messages, maybe light web work, maybe some quick stuff with ChatGPT or something like that. Nice to have that on a separate screen, especially because my M1 is a little bit underpowered at 16 gigabytes these days of RAM. So um, I
Yeah.
think I'll,
You
I'll just
mentioned.
stop. Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Mark.
you mentioned. Steve sat in an armchair when the first one came out, and yeah, there wasn't a lot on the first one in terms of apps that were portable or available. There certainly weren't productivity apps to the degree that there are now. And I think then people started saying, "Yeah, this is great. I can watch movies on it, but I really need to do work on it." And then we got this development of the iPad Pro, higher functioning kind of devices that could be used for productivity. So yeah, I think the intent was this is your entertainment center in your lap when it first came out. Peter, what about you?
Yeah.
What's your I? Yeah,
Well, you could also initially you could run all the iPhone apps and they just look real big.
yeah,
And then that gradually started moving away, and we looked like we were going to have more and more of an iPad OS. And then they formally did actually have a split for iPad OS now. And
yeah,
sometimes this can be a little disappointing for people because you may be looking for something on your iPad and not find it because it used to have an iPhone version, but that may or may not still run, depending on the developer, by the way,
yeah.
on which devices that will run. That's all in Xcode. So, yeah, Peter.
Peter.
Yeah, well, I'm a heavy iPad user, and I think I'm pretty conventional. I mean, and I think entertainment is a-okay as a principal use for a device. So, first of all, I watch TV shows and movies, and these are ones that I watch solo. If I'm watching solo, I'm going to be watching on my iPad. The screen is just outstanding. It's the best screen I own. It's better than my uh, M4 MacBook Pro. It's better than my new TV. I did not get a giant OLED TV. I got a one slot, notch down from OLED. But other than except for the other screens being bigger, uh, they're better. The blacks are blacker. The colors are richer. The contrast is more. I mean, it's a gorgeous device. Secondly, I use it to read particular books, books and items that are in color, and particularly ones that are PDFs. For flowable books, I use a Kindle for reasons we can go into some other time. But I need a device that's large enough for a PDF standard page size to look okay, and the 13 inches is good enough for that. And I also use it to skim news stories from major papers and magazines, from Apple News, from an RSS reader. It is simply the best, like Steve did, lean back device for all of the things I just mentioned. And at the same time, I can jump and check my email. I mean, I can do other things if I need to. And I might do a little bit of that just so I don't get up, go, trundle to the other end of the house and kick onto my other machine. Uh, I like doing all of that. And I think people who conceive of it that way will be happy with it.
All right, Bob.
Mostly, my iPad is used for digital consumption, as has been mentioned earlier, news and entertainment, such as watching YouTube video when I'm walking on the treadmill or on a flight. Very little actual creation, perhaps the occasional email checking, perhaps showcasing photos to a client or family, and once in a while, a little photo touch up and so forth from iPhoto, which is not the real name, it's photos.app. Uh, I enjoy my iPad, but I don't use it all that much. I'm mostly Mac centric.
Yeah, I have an iPad Pro M5, an iPad Air M4, and an iPad Mini. And I use them for different purposes. And so, it's my iPad Mini sits downstairs and is plugged in the front room on a table that we have that every day my wife and I meet for coffee. She gets up, dog does stuff with the dog. I eventually get up and we both sit and have coffee. And she has her device there, and I have my device. And we'll talk, we'll look at news articles, we'll have those conversations. For me, the iPad mini is just the right size to hold in my hand, bigger than my phone, and allows me to read news articles, do crossword puzzles, the New York Times mini I do every morning, and the kind of things I need to exercise my mind and then have conversation with my wife at the same time. The iPad Pro and the iPad Air, I take them to the office occasionally. If I'm going in for one meeting and I know I want to have a device to access email and other documents that I have, I'll bring my iPad with me. If I'm going in to teach, then generally, although I could do it with the iPad, generally I take in my MacBook to plug in and run stuff from my MacBook in the classroom. But I could be using the iPad to do the same thing. But again, I have to have keyboards for these things. I can't just carry them in a sleeve and open them up and work with them. And for that reason, I don't use them as much as with the exception of the iPad Mini. The other two have keyboards, and to take them in and out of the keyboard each time when I want to watch entertainment is a bit of a hassle to do that. So I'll watch entertainment on one of my monitors in here or on a screen. So that's kind of my use of them, and for different purposes. So next question is, any tips that you've learned that you care to share, Chris?
Yeah, I touched on universal control, but specifically how that works is when your iPad is within the field proximity to your Mac, it will show it as an external screen. And not only that, it will allow, and it's unfortunately, even regardless if it's the left or right side, the cursor will run off the right side of your screen. So if, like me, that doesn't work and you have to have, because I have a light there, and you have to have the iPad on the left side, it's still the right side of the screen. You can change it. It probably won't remember. Maybe they fix that in 26. I should take a look. But it's very handy in terms of not only once the cursor's there, I can type there. And so that's great because, although I'm dictating more and more now, particularly for longer text messages, and, like the kids, my life is gravitating from email towards texting because that's just what most of my friends are using these days. So both are handy. Um, let's see, there was something else. Uh, I think when we purchase a machine, we at least to ourselves at least probably justify how we're going to use it, what we're going to use that device for. And that's a good strategic plan. However, once the device is home and you've warmed the thing up and gotten it into the Apple ecosystem and or ecosystem, and you know, you've got mail going, you've got messages going, and then you start thinking, okay, well, now how tactically am I going to use this? I had a really interesting experience, albeit on my iPhone, but Apple has moved. First of all, they got the Major League Soccer concession, so all the Major League Soccer games have been on Apple TV, and that used to have a $99 price tag to it. Well, in the quarterfinals leading up to the Cup final, which was last Saturday, which was amazing, by the way, um, they decided it was going to be free from now on. And so we got to see, the two semifinal matches, and the final match was really Lionel Messi was just amazing in that game. And they timed it at 2:30 Eastern time so that everybody in Europe could watch it, which is kind of cool. It's probably the biggest day in the history of American soccer. So, well, anyway, this is a great thing for to have the iPad sitting there next to my Mac. If I'm, there's something like I'm waiting on, like a text message to come in, an email to come in, or I'm watching a soccer game or some other sports thing on there. It's just nice to have in the corner and have it running. I know, for instance, Marty, you're big on the classic films, right? So
Hmm.
that would be something you could do with an iPad, right?
Yeah, or while I'm working on my computer and I've got three monitors. Two of them are work, and one of them's Turner Classic Movies going on the side. Yeah, Peter, what about you?
Well, I'm mainly a reaction here. I strongly second Chris's universal control. I didn't think of it so much as using my iPad, but anytime I use my MacBook Pro at my desk setup, I have a magnetic thing I just snap my iPad into that's to the left of my monitor, and the setting has stuck. I run it as an independent device, but I control it from my trackpad and keyboard. And I'll use it to maybe have a document that we're sharing in a Zoom meeting to sort of as a second screen. Maybe if I'm doing some work, I'll have a baseball game or a football game or a basketball game on with the sound turned off that I can glance over and see how that's going. But I would say whenever I'm using my studio display monitor, the iPad is right there. And when I'm out about with my MacBook Pro using its built in screen, it's not unusual because I do carry my iPad everywhere. That I'd be using it if I needed extra screen real estate next to it. And I would say your mileage may vary. I understand what you're saying, Marty, about I don't like changing cases, but I've become something of a ninja with the magnetic attachment of these things. Just popping the iPad out of the keyboard case, putting it in the folio case, putting it on the frame next to my studio display monitor. It didn't take much effort to make that sort of muscle memory.
I lost audio. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'm next, right? Uh, anyway, what I put was, even though I don't have an iPad right now, if I were to buy one, there'd be two things I'd use. One is I'd like to get the Apple Pencil, which I don't know if we've mentioned that yet. So we can write. You mentioned it briefly, Marty, but the idea of using the pencil to be able to do freeform uh, note taking appeals to me. And from what I've seen, it can even recognize handwriting that's as bad as mine.
Yeah.
And the other
Yeah.
thing is the universal access stuff that he was mentioning, that Chris had mentioned earlier, and also being able to use the touchpad on the iPad for my MacBook, so you're able to do things with touch. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's all I have to say about
Yeah.
tips.
Okay, Bob, tips that you've learned.
Well, I find it useful as a secondary monitor for your Mac, or me specifically for my MacBook Air when I'm on the road. My desktop Mac has two screens. I'm hard pressed to get along without an extra screen. It's also the iPad's also useful as an AirPlay source for a compatible TV, whether it be your own TV or one at a friend's house or at a hotel. We also have an older iPad that lives in our kitchen and is used as a repository for our shopping list and recipes. It is nice to have a pencil, but unless you need the pressure sensitivity, a third party pencil, as I said before, it's all that I need. Marty?
Yeah. I've already kind of mentioned this as tips that I've learned. I really like rock, paper, pencil. Jeff Gamet introduced me to it, and he said you need to take a look at this and try it out. And it's astropad.com. Again, the link is in the show notes. But it gives the iPad sort of a paper feel for writing. I have to admit I pretty much gave up writing, physically writing, 15 or 20 years ago. I mean, everything I do is typing. I dread when I have to physically write stuff. So I always have a device with me and always generally have a keyboard with the device to be able to do that. But for those of us who still like handwritten and doing handwriting on a digital device, I would recommend this rock paper pencil. Try it out, and you'll you'll enjoy it if you want to get a sense of reactivity from your writing on glass or not glass. It works pretty well. Okay, let's pull this together. We got one final question, and it goes to Chris. Any suggestions for new iPad users?
I think I already touched on that in terms of, thinking about going from the strategic plan when you decided you were going to buy an iPad, you had an idea what you were going to use it for. And then once you get the thing loaded up, starting to think about, okay, now tactically, what do I need in my day to day usage of this? For sure, if you're a book reader, I mean, you know, I think I had about 500 Kindle books. And then my wife decided she was going to create her own account. And so she added more than 500 books. And now that we have the Prime family plan through Amazon, we can see each other's books. So it's getting pretty Looney Tunes. Uh, but I have found in my older years here that I much prefer reading on a screen than reading a physical book. I still enjoy them, but I like the type to be a certain size, consistency. I can read a lot faster. I'm sort of a slow reader, and I just got through a Dr. Zhivago class last year, and in the new year we're going to take War and Peace, Sue and I, and that's 1500 pages or something. So it just really helps me when I'm reading something of that length, and the audiobooks do too, by the way. Um, and it's just like, or entertainment. I mean, that alone for a lot of people, you throw in some text messaging and a few emails, and you've got an iPad use case right there. But sort of plan ahead and think about it. And also, as we've discovered tonight with these great ideas, like I love Marty's rock, paper, pencil, because I can't use the Apple Pencil One because I have an art tablet for my photography stuff, which unfortunately I rarely use, but it's got a pressure sensitive stylus. And once you get used to that, it's really hard to go back to the Apple Pencil One. But I'd love to try rock, paper, pencil and see, because I see lots of people taking notes on them. And maybe
Yeah.
that's how they're doing it. But I think that's what I would suggest.
Okay,
See, Peter?
Peter.
Yeah, my suggestion's pretty simple. Go to the Apple Store and take the Getting Started iPad class. In fact, maybe take it more than once because they tend to have more content than they can fit in the hour that's scheduled, and they go with the whim or the what they perceive the desires of the group they have in front of them. And you'll often hear not only what you want answered, but you'll hear interesting stuff from the other people who happen to be in your group. So I've done that class probably 3 or 4 times now over the years. And I would include classes they offer, although this time of year they tend to just offer the basic classes, and towards the non big selling season, they tend to offer a wider variety. Other ways you might be planning to use your iPad. I took one on how to draw, and I'm not interested in artistic drawing, but I do math on whiteboards in my classes, or I did at the time. And I got a big leg up on doing that. And I guess one other suggestion I'd have for iPad users who are fellow math teachers or fellow engineering teachers is I'd show them how mathematical notation can be turned into typed mathematical notation with square roots and exponents and integral symbols and all the fancy Greek letters very easily using an Apple Pencil. And many calculations can be done just in line with how you scribble it down.
Charlie, you've got a couple of suggestions for new iPad users?
Sorry. Okay, unmuted. Yeah, basically decide whether you need one. I'm fine with my iPhone and my MacBook Pro, and particularly since it can do the things that we're describing here. I can't think of anything except for the note taking. That's interesting, and that rock paper scissors thing looks really interesting. Um, but anyway, just really decide if you need another device that you need to worry about and charge.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Bob.
Before you buy your first iPad, talk with other iPad owners and solicit their recommendations. Recently, I replaced my 6 to 8 year old iPad Pro with an iPad Air, and that works for me. I don't miss the extra power. If you plan on regularly editing video on your iPad, then you would be better served with an iPad Pro. Buy the one that's right for you. I also strongly recommend buy a case and a screen protector, whether it's glossy or it is rock, paper, scissors, or whatever that was. Many new users who have a bad taste for their old work computer or don't have much computer experience, they feel can feel the iPad is more user friendly and more approachable, and it might be easier for them to use than a Mac, and easier for them to see and navigate than an iPhone. So do your research before you buy, and don't be afraid to buy the entry level unit because that might be all that you need. And if it isn't up to your standards of what you need, do what we did here, which is put it in the kitchen as your shopping list iPad. Marty?
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of the things. You know, one of the problems of being always the last person to respond in the round of questions is you all come in and use some of the ideas that I wrote in earlier before. So I'm just a echo. I'm just a mirror of some of the things. Go to your friends who have an iPad. Have them show you what they use it for and how they use it. Go to an Apple store and play with some of the iPads there. Sit in on a class like Peter is suggesting, even though you don't own an iPad, because then you'll get to see somebody in an hour take you through the different things, and then you can maybe make a use. You'll have a better understanding of what they can be used for and whether or not it meets any particular need that you have. So get the opportunity to kind of walk into this safely before you clunk down some money. And there are whole ranges of iPads, as Bob has said, from a base use iPad that will do many of the same things that the more expensive iPads do, but you might not need that kind of power or that kind of editing purpose. And frankly, if you're getting your first iPad, get one that you can use until you can't use it anymore. And you find another use that maybe your next iPad then is a higher powered or has more memory or does different things. So, it's it's a purchase that you want to have for a while, but it's not a purchase that you have to have forever. So if your abilities grow and your interests grow in doing things that you can't do on your current iPad, well, then it's probably time for a new iPad. And so that's my thoughts about it. Just go spend some time in the store, find out when the classes are, and go ahead and join one of those classes if you can, just to find out what's possible. And I see Chris has got something he wants to add.
I just want to second that, Marty. That is an absolutely fantastic idea because for a lot of new users, you go and you start looking at it, and a salesperson comes over and you start talking, and invariably they'll say, what do you want to do on your iPad? And if you've never used one before, you might have a vague idea. Gee, maybe I can do my photography. Maybe I can take, oh, is mail on there? Gosh, and messages are on there. If you go to a class first, you see it in action, and then you can relate to, yeah, I'd like to do that, or I'd like to do that. I think that's a really fascinating idea, and I would definitely second that. Peter.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing about the classes is just like you can look at the 1-star reviews on any of the, Amazon or any of those sites. When you go to a class, there's often one person, maybe two, who's shown up with a problem they've run into on their iPad and they want it solved. So you'll get an idea of issues people run into that they struggle with. And I think that's worthwhile too if you're thinking about buying one.
Yeah, as an instructor, that must be really tough because it's like, I've got a plan. My plan is to teach you how to use your iPad. And somebody comes in and says, oh no, my plan is that you're going to fix my iPad for me.
Right.
And so, yeah, that could be a bit disruptive. And, I'd be say, well, there's a thing over there called the Genius Bar.
Right.
That's where you can get your questions answered. Well, if there's nothing further, I'm going to try and wrap the show if we can do that. Join us next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube at youtube.com/@oldmacgang. And you can see the live feed. Of course, you can get the replay anytime you want off of YouTube, or you can get it on a podcast version of it. So you can get the audio only version. Both versions will have all of the show notes in it and all of the links that we've spoken about in the show. So you don't have to take notes on your iPad while you're listening to the show. The show notes are there to get you where you want to go with it. So look within the notes section of either the video or the audio file that you're using, and you'll find the show notes with the links. Our email is thepodtalknetwork@gmail.com. Feel free to email us with ideas, suggestions, and such. Our website is thepodtalk.net. That's www.thepodtalk.net. And links to information to this show and other shows that we do on the Pod Talk Network that you might be interested in. I think it was Chris or somebody alluded to the fact that I like old movies. We do a show called Fade to Chat, and that's kind of a discussion chat show about old movies. This last week, we did Bringing Up Baby. Next week, we're doing one that's probably going to be a little controversial in the sense that it's called How to Murder Your Wife with Jack Lemmon. Kind of a farce, real masculine oriented, edged kind of movie, but we're going to be doing that. And then we'll probably get a Christmas movie in before the end of the year. So Fade to Chat is another podcast that you can find on the podtalk.net. Our music is by Philip Gross, Marrakesh, part of the Free Music Archive and Creative Commons. Thanks to Bob, Chris, Peter, and Charlie, and to you, because right now you're part of the Old Mac Gang. All right.